Hello and welcome everybody here to our Hal Clinics Community and Health and Wellness Night. We are once again here for our open discussion, and tonight on January 31st, what we're going to discuss is resiliency. So building the strength to make lasting changes. What I'm going to do is we're just going to kind of hang in here for a short moment while other participants are joining. Right now we have quite a few on board, and I just want to say hello to everybody. Please, if you don't mind, while others are popping on, if you can use one of your buttons down below to give us a wave or a hello while we're waiting for them to come in. So some of our people joining us will be some of our community members within our Hal Clinics programming. And we also have some outsiders as well that are coming in to stem their own education and to figure out their own resiliency as it goes. Now, while we're sitting here and waiting for a few folks to pop in, I'm actually going to it doesn't look like I'm going to do it that way, but what I'm going to do is ask a question out to all our individuals here. And I want to know if you have an opportunity, if you can pop in the chat and is to write down, what does resiliency mean to you? We all have an understanding on what resiliency may mean, but what I want to know is what does it mean to you? So I'm excited to see some of those coming in our chat. And I'm going to put a little hello down here. Send that down. Excellent. So we've already got someone popping in here. Overcoming obstacles. Great. Thank you very much for that input. We'll let a few more come in as we are doing that as well. So I'm just going to remove that down out of my views. Strength and to be consistent and to keep on track. Great information about what you feel resiliency, not resistancy. That's the opposite as we go. I've just got the R's in the mind, but little Freudian slip there. So as we are waiting for a few more folks to get in there, we're going to actually get this started, and I'm going to stop this share screen here. So now what we have is, hello, it's Samantha Upshaw here from Hal Clinics. We also have with us Dr. Jamie Lee, who is our monitoring physician within the program as well. And we have Claudia, who's on board in our clinic, as well as our health coaches as well. So where are we going to start? I did ask that question, what does resiliency mean to you? I want to start looking at for us as well is to actually introduce resiliency. Having a look at what does resiliency mean and in the importance of it in our weight loss. Once again, Hal Clinics here, we are, our main focus is in the sense of helping you guys lose weight through many different avenues, not just eating less and moving more, but looking at your own personal strengths. So resistance itself is a term that often gets thrown around an awful lot. We use it for many different terms, but do we know how we're using it and why we're using it? So simple definition here. And I know that Dr. Lee and Claudia will have their definitions as well, but resiliency is about the ability to bounce back from difficult situations and continuing on and moving forward. It's not about ever experience, we're going to see those setbacks, we're going to have those challenges, but rather than feeling that we need to stop, it's learning how to handle them and to become stronger and to move on from the other side. Now, I'm actually, before I move on to that next step about resiliency and the potential, Dr. Lee, I know that you had a definition that we were just speaking of there earlier, right before our webinar. Let me know a little bit of what you feel about resiliency and those definitions.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to look at it, and I had to look it up myself in terms of the English definition based on the Oxford Dictionary, right? And it gives us a really good kind of starting point, and because that's kind of what we use on a daily basis, right? When we use the word resilience, but when you think about in the psychology world, it's different too as well. So I'm just going to read word verbatim from the Oxford Dictionary, and they have two descriptions. So the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness, and here in quotations have the remarkable resilience of so many institutions. And the other definition, it's basically the ability of a substance or object to spring back, just like you were saying, Samantha, is to recover into a shape or elasticity, right? And so, that's the Oxford Dictionary's definition. In the psychology world, resilience is a little different, and it's thought of as one's ability to cope, with stressors and difficult times in their life that may affect them seriously mentally or physically, or so the difficult things that you're going through and allows you to get through that. That's in the psychology or resilience, and often that leads to a better outcome. So the individual comes out of it, less harm, or recovers more quickly, or just gains the experience and gets to grow from it too as well, right? Because all this stuff, all your experiences really will help you grow in the end. And it's really, I mean, when Sam, said we need to do something on resilience, I'm like, that's great, because we in the past we were talking a lot about physiology, metabolism, muscles, calories, and stuff like that. But all that is secondary, ancillary to, these things that we're talking about, these virtues, these traits, these characteristics, because these are your foundation. So if you're able to build a huge foundation, your tower can be as tall as you want it to be, right? And so I think this was a great topic that Sam wanted to cover. And so that's kind of the psychology definition. I think all of us, in a way, have experienced resilience and have come to have our own personal definition, right? And for me, I kind of agree with the psychology part. When I look at my personal life and things I've been through, is that how I handle it, when I fail, when things don't go my way. Those are the things. How do I react to it too as well, right? Because obviously, for every action, there's always a reaction, and the way we respond to it is very important too. And so yeah, so for me, my definition is very similar to the psychology definition.
What about yourself, Claudia? How would you, define that resiliency in your own words?
Well, for me, resiliency, in my own journey, I feel like it's um, having a bouncy ball mindset. I accepting the fact that I will face obstacles. I will have days that things are not going the way I want them to go. Bouncing back instead of giving up. That makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I call a, bouncy ball mindset. And knowing that, I need to keep that positive mindset, or, that it will always be like that. I will always have those, things that I call them obstacle or bump in the road, right? It's like it will be there. How I'm going to respond to that, how I'm going to handle it is the main key. Just like we were talking the other day, and I said, if I'm having a big event in Ottawa and I get into car and I want to go to Ottawa, but an hour on the highway, I realize I don't have a gas. Like I don't have gas, and the next gas station is like 80 kilometers away. What am I going to do? I'm going to detour, find the closest gas station. Yes, get some gas, maybe get a little bit distracted in that convenience store next to it. But at the end of the day, I will go back in the highway. And now I go another hour and I have flat tire. I have to wait another 2 hours for CAA to come and help me change the tire. Still time, spent, but I still go back on the highway. That's how I look at it.
You could have drove home at any point of that.
Exactly. I could have said, oh, no, doesn't work, and let's go back. But no, I will go back to the highway because it is important. The goal that I have and the destination that I want to go, it is important.
That's great. And I love the bouncy ball, because each time that we go through and practice these elements, that ball just bounces a little less higher. It still bounces and it's expected to bounce. And we should, appreciate the bouncy ball for what it is. but still enjoy that journey. You know, the next point that we're going to touch base on and very shortly is going to be, you know, is resiliency is something that can be cultivated or strengthened over time. But I want to put out another little group discussion here again, and is actually talk about right before that is how have you experienced resilience over your lifespan, and what does it look like? So, you know, for myself, when I think about resiliency of where I am today, I would say that, you know, through practice and through experience of life and hitting these bumps in the road, I would feel that I've had more practice and more resilient today compared to my 20s, or my, you know, at 15. But, you know, saying that now, okay, in the 40s, I have got the most resiliency, but I had more comfort with it, though, I would say in my 20s, with less plugins and less different things that I always had to worry about as it goes. But it is that life experience that has kind of traveled that. How about for yourself, Dr. Lee, when it comes to resilience throughout your life? And where do you feel that you've actually built your resiliency from? And you know, what were
Yeah, that's a very good question, Sam, because you know, really, when you ask that question, the question becomes, you know, like, you know, is resilience something that we're born with or something we can actually cultivate? And that's very important. And you know, I guess my stance is that it's a bit of both. You know, when I think about resilience, you know, I think about a seed, you know, a seed of resilience, you know, in its infancy, you know. So every kid has resilience, and even toddlers. And here is the best example of resilience. You know, I have two kids, they're very young. Claudia has kids. I know Samantha has children as well. And you know, if you have kids, you can relate to this. If you have kids, you know, put a thumbs up in our chat. And because if you have kids, you know, you have seen them as a baby, an infant, and as they become a toddler, what do? They try to walk. And every parent will give them the longest time ever to practice walk until they get it right. So you know, if everything being normal, the kid will eventually learn how to walk. They will fall, they will trip, they will stutter, you know, they will fall on their bums, but they will continue to walk. They are the best definition of resilience, right? And so we can learn from our toddlers, you know, they never give up. They don't know anything different. And that's one of the things. But as we get older, and I think, you know, and this is normal for all of us, right? It's the life experiences that will influence our mind, our mindset as well, right? Whether you have a fixed mindset, a growth mindset, you know, your emotional support, your emotional intelligence, your ability to adapt, your optimism in life and stuff like that, your hardship that you've gone through, things that you might have succeeded, things that might fail, and that kind of stuff. You have a role model throughout your life. All these things will actually shape your resilience. And resilience is not something that at least from myself, I don't think that it's static. You don't just develop and that's it. You know, what happens, I think, is that your resilience changes over the years. And you asked the question, you know, some of my experiences. And I was like, well, you know why? Like, I'm only in my 40s, you know, someone in its 70s may have a lot more examples, right? But I think as we get older, you know, for example, as we get older, we tend to have a little more patience, right? You know, teenagers have zero patience. You know, in your 30s, have a little more, in your 40s and 50s. And so your resilience starts to change over time as you experience triumphs, tribulations, and all these things, and then adversaries and stuff like that. And so, you know, in my short time, you know, my biggest resilience, you know, it's like, it's clear for me was that when I was 20, no, when I was 22, 21, I came here, I finished university already, and I got into med school. And you know, like my brothers chipped in money to buy me a motorcycle. It was a crotch rocket. And I was super happy, right? It was like I would say one of the best summers of my life. Short-lived though, right? And so I in the end is that I got into a very serious motorcycle accident, at a frontal bleed. I was in the ICU for weeks, and you know, a couple weeks in the hospital, 5 surgeries and stuff like that. And I was supposed to go to, med school, in September, and it's not in Ontario. It's actually abroad. It's a different country, and so it was tough. So I had to delay my education for a semester. But what it was that I actually had to do my own rehab for 2 years by myself, right? I had a lot of memory issues and retraining to learn how to study again. That was really tough. And I remember having to stay up, getting up like, 4 or 5 hours before the morning examination to go over notes so that I remember something. But it's that kind of like, you know, putting in that extra effort and knowing your weaknesses, knowing what you need to do. For me, that was the biggest kind of challenge in my life for about 3 years, until things started to normalize a little more. My strength came back, my joints were better. I had a few surgeries while I was in med school too as well, and delaying, your education. So for me, I learned a lot from that. So then, and this is where part of your resilience grows, right? Like, whenever I think of a difficult time, to me, there's nothing more difficult than like, your life flashing before you, and like your whole like future is kind of up in the air, right? And so having gone through that, for me, I just feel like nothing really can compare to that. Obviously, there could be more drastic things down the road, but like, it's these experiences that we draw upon that feeds into our resilience. So that for me was a moment of difficulties where I felt I demonstrated a lot of resilience. And you need to think back to convince, to not convince, but to to learn from your experiences, like, hey, you know what, that you actually did demonstrate resilience. You were able to get through some tough times as well. If you don't, then a lot of things go to waste. Your experiences go to waste.
And how about yourself, Claudia, when it comes to resiliency? Because I know that you have, especially in weight management, many experiences of resiliency. Is there something that you want to share today as well on, just to help patients on their journey around weight management and resiliency of what that looked like for you personally, because it looks like different for everybody as they go?
Yes, for me, in the weight management journey, what I feel like was the biggest key was to be open to learn from my slip ups, right? Because it felt like I was doing a lot of things wrong. I thought it's going to help, but there were many, many things that either I was doing it wrong or if I wasn't doing long enough to get the result. So, and I tried to have, I think we talked about it before, to have a list of do's and don'ts for myself. And once in a while, go back and just revisit them and see, okay, how much of it will now be something that I can rely on? It's got to work for now. And how much of it, I don't think that it will be helpful. And gradually, I learned to trust my, instinct, and kind of my confidence went up. And I'm okay, this is going, but I can figure it out. I can go back and revisit what I had and what I've done that worked for me or didn't work for me, and see if I can try those. As the same thing that Dr. Lee said, is just the more I practiced it, the easier it got for me. And I felt like that my resilience is growing. And I know the fact that it will be more obstacles coming. It will be some bumps in the road, but I will learn. I have this mindset that I will always be ready to learn. And, just that will bring my resilience back up.
And we've seen, just getting onto around the weight management with yourself there, Claudia, we've had the opportunity, and some of our patients have had the opportunity to see some before and after photos of you. And with that being said, they're wonderful imagery. They're a sign of resiliency there, but that journey alone wasn't just a one-step journey.
No.
You have gone up, you have gone through downs,
Definitely.
you have gone up, and then you found your moments. And it's that you know, what I feel when I hear stories, that continuation of desire to drive forward and learn from those failures. And I think Dr. Lee made a really good point. It actually hit me. Kids are the greatest example when they're walking. And I think it's the response that we give that we're missing out for ourselves as well, because when our child, when we're first teaching them to walk, we set them up, we get them going, and they may fall over, but do we get mad or cry and say we're done? You're like, oh, and we celebrate their failure
Mhm.
in a whole different aspect. And
The
it's just like
bouncy ball
Yeah, yeah.
mindset,
bouncy
They,
right?
ball
they never
moment.
give up, right? They
No.
never give up.
And
Yeah.
we do that for our children in their beginning phases and work on through it. But that's something I'm actually going to think about it, you know, as I'm going through. Am I being as kind as an infant walking? And they all walk at different stages, and they all walk
Mhm.
differently.
Yeah, but
We're
they
like,
all at the end walk,
they
and
all
that's
walk.
the key, right? Like, you know, there's obviously an innate program for them to learn how to walk. And so that means, and that's why I feel that we all have this inside of us. We just need to nurture it, you know,
Mhm.
seed, you know, just soil that seed, you know, water it, cultivate it too as well. And when you think about resilience, you know, you only really demonstrate that when the times get tough, when you're challenged, when things fail, all right? And it's inherent in resilience. When you want to demonstrate resilience, basically you're going through some tough times, right? And we all go through some tough times. And this is why it's so important in weight management, these virtues, these checkup from the neck up that we do a lot. You know, and as I said before, if you ever sit in a session with me, we're talking about 90%, you know, personal development and 10%, you know, food and exercise and stuff like that. And that's just the way my teachings are. But you know, it's inherent in resilience, and so you have to work on that, because when you go through weight loss, and Claudia and, you know, and Sam just said this, is that it was a long journey. There was ups and downs, and it allowed you, and this bouncing back, you know, getting back on track, you know, allowed you to achieve your goal. And even once you achieve your goal, right, Claudia, you still have other things to work on, and you just discover and rediscover things that you can improve upon too as well. So it's never finished, right? Your life's journey, you know, only when, you know, you close your eyes for the last time, that you don't have to work on anything anymore. Even on your deathbed, people still work on the personal development. What do? We regret a lot of the things that we don't do or don't say, you know, in our lives and stuff, and never accomplish. And so you still work on personal development even in your last breaths or last moments in life too, right? And so it's very important to understand that these things these things are not static, I feel, and that these can definitely be worked upon. And I actually looked at a few articles, and I was very curious. I knew that you can work on this, and I actually looked at a few articles, and there was a psychology study done on resilience actually in university. They took actually university students that are the best guinea pigs, right? Because they want a few bucks, right? And so what they did was they put them through a program. Okay, half of them program, half of them that didn't. And the program was like problem solving, emotional, the mindfulness, understanding where how to communicate, their kind of self talk, and a bit of optimism and stuff like that. And they put them through some stressful situations, and then they were able to score them through, you know, based on their how they got through their stressful outcomes and stuff like that. And what they found was that those who actually were taught some skills of resilience, and it's a lot, right? Like there's a lot of things that influence resilience. These individuals, the group, the experimental group that got the education, had better outcome scores for stress, anxiety, all these things, right? And resilience scores too as well. And so, you know, and that's just in a short um, study, but we have our whole lifespan. Every time you go through something tough or something happens to you, whatever it may be, you know, you are being tested. And take, like Claudia said, take that opportunity to learn, you know, but you have to be open-minded to do that. You can be emotional beginning, meaning that, you know, if something happens to a loved one, of course you're going to be emotional. That's normal, right? But it has to stop somewhere so that you can actually think more logically, think straight, and get over it and make the best of the situation. When God gives you lemon, you make lemonade. That saying is so true. And so I do think that this is something that we need to always work on when we have the chance to as well. And I think it's like anything else. It's like a habit. This can become a habit, and one of the ways that it become a habit, for myself, is what I do a lot is self-talk. I do a lot of self-talk. I do a lot of note-taking. I do a lot of like writing down my plans and stuff like that. And so, and the self-talk typically in resilience has to do with positive self-talk, right? The way you portray yourself. If you say yourself a failure, well, that's a dead end statement. Then what are you going to say beyond that? Really nothing, right? And so, as Claudia said, if you approach it, so this mindset of being a student, a student of life. We all are students. No one's an expert. Everybody goes through life once, right? So nobody can be a true expert, right? Unless you believe in reincarnation, that might be different. But having said that, you go through life once, and so we're all learning, right? So nobody's perfect, but you will get through it somehow, some way, and you will look back, and usually when you look back after you get through things, it's never that bad, and you can connect the dots on how you got through it. But when you're going through a situation, it's a lot different. You can't connect the dots to get out of it. How to make things better somehow. Like to at the very end. Sometimes it's just too much gap. And so you just need to do 1 or 2 steps 10 feet in front of you. So it's like that fog that the car drives through. You see only 10 feet, right? And so you drive another 10 feet, you see another 10 feet. You drive another 10 feet, you see another 10. And eventually you've driven through the fog itself. And then when you look back, it's like, okay, that's just really a straight road with a bend to the left. Then you're like, oh, I'm through the fog, right? So that's kind of what I think there.
Yeah, and that's great. Now, one of the questions that I had put out there, when it came to posting our webinar out to our group, is that itself is resiliency. Can we grow it? And it comes down to that some people actually have their natural inclination towards resiliency. Others may have to develop it through their lifespans itself. So it's a little bit of both. And I know Dr. Lee has further details to give on that as well, but it can be influenced on factors like personality, your upbringings, your past experiences with overcoming certain challenges. But however, resilience is not always just an inherited trait itself, but can be learned and strengthened through practice and the mindset shift. So you did talk about mindset. I will be coming back to that. Anyone have anything to add, whether that it is innate or learned? So yourself, Dr. Lee, I know that we had chat right before, and is there anything else that you wanted to add in there in regards to the fact that is it innate or learned, or
Yeah, I think for the most part, I think it's predominantly learned, to be honest with you. As you grow up, from a toddler to a child to a teenager to young adult to adult to in your more your latter sixth, seventh, eighth decade of life. I think things change, and I do see other individuals who I look up to, and they have done so much in their lives that they nothing phases them. I say that to myself, nothing phases you. It's like, because they've been through it all, right? And so personally, I think humans can change, right? And it's funny because, like, it's not funny, but I had a family crisis in the over the holidays, and one of the question that my younger brother posed to me is that, do you think I'm doing the right thing? And do you think that people can change? Is what his basic question was, right? And I had to think about that, because sometimes you hear people like, say that people can't change just the way they are, right? By default, right? You know what I mean? And I said, because based on the situation, I can't comment on your situation, but I would be a hypocrite to say that people can't change, because I always want to change for the better, right? And so if I think that I can change, so I must believe that myself. Um, and so I think a lot of our resilience that we developed is actually learned to the adversaries that we go through life, right? And a lot of times, you can read too as well. Like I do a lot of reading myself on personal development, you read what people have gone through. You can relate. That's empathy, right? You can relate to what they've gone through. So like, I came from a communist country, and just, from the Vietnam War, and I can, the Ukraine war, like I can empathize what's going on with over there, right? And so it's not, a lot of times it is our personal experience that we go through, but a lot of times, the connections you make with other individuals and the stories here, and your sense of empathy will allow you to build resilience too as well, because that individual can do it, you can do it too, right? And so we hear that all the time: if I can do it, you can do it. So there's a reason why people say that, because there's definitely some truth to that, right? And it doesn't mean you're going to be the exact same outcome, but you can get through it too as well, right? So for the most part, I honestly do feel that it's something that is predominantly learned, I think.
Mhm. Learned, and I agree, environmental factors and how you're bringing resiliency shows differently in us all, but how we all can get that familiar, comfortable feeling is cultivating that growth mindset. I think it's a vital aspect to actual having resiliency. It's that door that gives us that equipment to
Mm-hmm.
be resilient itself, and that growth mindset empowers us to face the
Mm-hmm.
adversity, seeing it not as a dead end but as a chance to
Mm-hmm.
learn. And that's what we're talking about before, is looking at it as learning aspects to bounce back and move on through. But achieving that growth mindset starts with the beliefs that the abilities can be developed through hard work. So you have to have belief in oneself to actually be able to continue that journey and that hard work and dedication. This contrasts the fixed mindset, where abilities are viewed as just the innate. I this is what I'm born with. I can't do anything else about it, or unchangeable. And I actually have some steps that I can help and provide you guys with. We're just going to briefly touch over these steps, because I've got some other tools that I'll share as we go on through as well. But the 5 steps that I've highlighted to help to help develop and grow the growth mindset. So, I think Claudia and we talked about a few of these points this week. We love to sit down together as group and talk about case scenarios of where we're at. It's just helping us with our development and us with our resiliency of dealing with different situations as it goes, but cultivating that sense of purpose. The why, the where, the whens, those type of things. We need to get that purpose to a goal, no matter how small or how big, that can help us get through those times when our motivation is low. And we all come up with that big goal, here, I want to lose weight. But we want to, for that pure focus, and Dr. Lee is actually really good at getting me back on focus and get, all we did was have a conversation, but all of a sudden I'm excited and getting it back on track. But what it is finding that goal's like a big flashlight moment that brightens up our high beams of headlights. But what we want to do is to cultivate that sense of purpose, or that little bit of motivation again, is actually getting a laser pen and picking some pinpoints of they're not small by all means, but micro goaling as you're going, and that will help you graduate with a degree, and just helping you finish and accomplish with more excitement as you go. So keeping that big picture in mind is very important, but is to also have a look and define those micro goals at a time, so you can have a reward and feel that drive to keep on going. Number 2, I've kind of looked at is embracing the areas of growth. So embrace any weaknesses that you may have and learned, and how do you want to work with them? And the funny thing is when I have employees come on in, when Claudia started, anyone on our front desk there, the first thing that they're always surprised with me is I'm like, they've come up and we said, oh, I don't know what to do, or I've made a mistake. And I'm like, yes, finally. I'm like, I'm so happy. And everyone looks at me crazy, but I'm like, this is where we're actually going to grow. I can't help you with the things that I can help you advance, but it's those times that I get excited is embracing those areas of growth. And somewhere I've got a little form here that I'm actually going to share with you as we go, because embracing those areas, so sometimes you're hiding from the weaknesses itself. We've got a very great tendency, I know I do as well, things that I'm not good at, I'm not going to hold on to and focus on, but hiding from those weaknesses means that you'll never overcome them. And instead of thinking I can't do this, try thinking some other thoughts. And that's what I'm going to try my best to share here with you. And I'll be sharing this document out for you guys to have a look at as well. And we're going to see multiple screens for a moment. So let me share. And yes, we've got our lovely Zoom screen, and I'm going to toggle over here in a second. My bar keeps on blocking me. And we're going to go here. And here we go. So, and what I was explaining there, instead of thinking itself, I can't do this. We all have had that moment. Some of these negative thoughts that come in here that I'll hear over time. I've just picked 2 random ones out there. These negative thoughts, we are sometimes thinking of the closed mindset. I'll never be able to lose weight. I always fail at my diets. It's a very common one that we'll hear on consultation or admission or somewhere throughout. My cravings are too powerful and I have to feed it. So what I love this worksheet to go on through, because our negative thoughts are usually the first automatic thoughts that shoot our way. And we actually have to work on these thoughts and work on this growth mindset as we go. So what I would have you do next is writing the evidence against that negative thought. Oh, sorry, my apologies. I'm actually going to go with my second one here. I get you to do the alternative thought first. Okay, so that alternative thought, what we want to think about is, if I'm actually going to make the statement of a negative thought, I'll never be able to lose weight, I always fail. What can I say on a positive manner that can help me? So I have the ability to make some healthy choices and live a healthy lifestyle. Some individuals, I've been practicing this form, would write a positive negative statement back in there. So, the ultimate statement is, I can't remember the turnover, but, I will get to lose my weight at some point. But we want to have a look at what your abilities are. But what is the evidence against that? So when you're going against that negative thought, a lot of folks will say, I'm never be able to lose weight. But what we find out is, out of the 5 diets that you've tried in the past, you've actually lost 30 pounds or 20 pounds or 5 pounds. So is that really, I'm not going to be able to lose weight? We can, right? So what we want to do is face that as we go. So the cravings, my cravings are too powerful. I have to feed it. Alternate thought, I do not always need to feed my crave, and I can be powerful too. So the evidence is because you've pushed through the crave by going to bed a few times, or you go to a certain event and you've been able to control it. So it's not very true. It's not absolute that your cravings are too powerful. We have that alternate thought in there. So that is something just to help embrace that areas of growth as you go. So I'm going to close that down here.
That's a great worksheet.
Yeah, and I've actually been using it a lot more in this past few weeks. I used it on myself definitely first, and realized how many negative thoughts do fire through. The automatic ones that come, we're very naturally always pulling into the negative form. It's just those automatic firings. So we do have to train ourselves to have a moment and to switch over. It may not just come naturally just to start always thinking positive. I work on that immensely over the time, but I will catch myself, oh, look, here I am being positive again. But making a joke out of it means that I can embed in it a little bit more. Number 3, disassociate improvement from a failure. So stop assuming that room for improvement translates to failure. It doesn't, you know, we need to, any areas that you may struggle in is not a lost cause, rather than it's the area where we can grow. And that's the growth mindset. It's an aspect that takes time, takes practice from breaking from those negative thoughts that we have. We just need to figure out how we need to get there. And that is the patience and time and investigation. Your first attempt or a trial will not be maybe the correct one at that time, but maybe not right again. We just have to keep on going in there. Number 4 is try different learning tactics. So Dr. Lee was talking about education and stemming and learning, just to help keep the motion going. There is no one size fits all with this, okay, with this learning model. What works for one person may not work for you, but if there's a possible way to increase that, I think it's a great appreciation, and it gives that little bit of what we talked about of cultivating a sense of purpose. When we're learning something new, it kind of gives that new stemming of information. I was talking to somebody today who's taking a course and learning new information, but also got a little bit of focus put in there because it was some familiar setting, something that I wanted to learn about, and now, you know, it is brought to that forefront. So it is important for a growth mindset to always continue learning. We'll never stop learning. And I think it's very important that we identify it as well, not just let it happen, but it's very important to label, I'm learning, you know, tell yourself these things so we can check mark that off as we go. And the next, for cultivating a growth mindset, and you can sometimes fall back down to asking for some help. And using your community, using resources like ourselves, your physicians or counselors, whoever it may be. This will help in turn help push that motivation and direct you as you go. So that is the 5. But remember, embrace challenges, never stop learning. Claudia added one of yours in there, so it's not I'm not rehashing these 5, but use the power of yet or one more. And celebrate small victories. It is important to celebrate those small victories, especially when we know those negative thoughts are the first typical initial thought that comes, the automatic responses. And I think even if it comes down to a minimal thing of when you're noticing it, it's like, oh, there's that negative thought again. Mm-hmm. Identify it as it comes in. It is very uncomfortable to identify it. We kind of run from the negative, but it's already there. It already appeared. We're just saying, hey, that way we can know the next step to kind of move on through. So cultivating a positive and growth-oriented mindset is a journey, and it's not a destination. We're always going to work on it as it goes. It requires the patience, practice, and persistence. Practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanence. So be careful what you're practicing as you're going on through, okay?
Right. You can practice negative stuff. There's a few definitions I just want to clarify, and so people don't get confused. And I think we threw the terms out a lot and maybe not defined it. One is a growth mindset. You know, growth mindset is not an open mind. You know, where you can open to a lot of different options that and whatnot. It's what we've been talking about. It's one's tendency. It's not it's not a true ability. It's just more of a tendency for one to think of obstacles, adversaries as learning opportunities, right? Whereas a fixed mindset as that we have a fixed innate ability to do something, and so when we can't do something, there is no more to it, right? And so I just want to make that distinction. Another distinction I want to make is resilience versus discipline. It's very similar. Okay, resilience is the ability when something happens to you and how you react to it and how it affects you and how you bounce back per se. We always want to bounce back, right? So that's so a great resilience individual will be, they don't take things to heart. They get thick skin, that kind of stuff, and they bounce back, like the bouncy ball that Claudia is talking about, or the way my saying is, getting back on track, on your journey again, right? You might deviate, you don't want to deviate 1 kilometer, you might want to deviate 200 meters and come back to your track that you're on. So the stronger the resilience in that way, the better you come back to your own track. So in your weight loss journey, you might fall off track, holiday, whatever, but hey, next day, boom, you're back on track. That's resilience too as well, right? The other distinction is discipline. Sometimes we confuse these. They're very similar because the reason why they're very similar is like, we embody all these virtues, by the way, right? And so sometimes it's hard to distinguish what is kind of the predominant type of virtue. And discipline is basically sticking to something, or your goals, to do it on a regular basis. So that's and that will allow you to achieve your goals, right? Resilience don't really allow you per se to achieve your goals, because it allows you to to weather the storm per se, but it's your discipline that you do on a regular basis, practicing basketball, whatever, baseball, throwing, darts, whatever, that allows you to achieve your goal, winning that championship, right? I think of Michael Jordan. When he loses a game, he goes into the gym and he practices for 2 or 3 hours shooting. It's crazy. And that's why he's so good. He has that discipline, right? And he also has the resilience. When he came back after baseball, if everybody knows Michael Jordan, he lost, and he vowed to come back to win championships. He won 3 more championships, right? That's resilience, right? Emotional resilience, all these things, right? And so that's a good distinguish to make too as well. And the other thing that Sam mentioned, in her chart was, if you want to pull back your chart, Sam, not a problem, is that if you look at the chart, you look at the way we think about things. And so, we have about 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. Unfortunately, everyone, the majority of these thoughts are all negatives. 2/3, 60% of them are actually negative thoughts that we have. By default, by nature, humans are more negative, and there's a reason for that.
That's
And the
survival
reason,
mechanism in there as well, right?
survival mechanism, exactly. We've adapted, over the years. We have to be cautious, we have to be vigilant, we have to look at our surroundings. But all these negative thoughts, typically, you think about it, they're all statements. They're dead end. There's no more, right? And so one of the things that you want to practice is asking yourself questions. How can I do better? What did I do wrong? What happened this time? What did I do last time to achieve this? That will allow you to soften the blow. That puts you in a student learning mode, right? And so that's what you do. And the other thing I like to do a lot is reframing. Reframing the situation. Oh, we do this all the time. It could be worse. Of course it could be worse, right? That's actually an example of reframing, right? And so reframing allows us to see things in a different perspective, a different light, a possible different outcome. It's just about possibilities, right? And so that's the other thing that might help you build more resilience to the tough times as well. So that's kind of what I
Along with
want
that
to.
reframing there, Dr. Lee,
Mhm.
another point that I like to add in there is scaling.
Absolutely, yeah.
When it comes down to I cannot, well, how true is that factor on a scale from 1 to 10? And it was very surprising this week when I was pulling that out. I can't do it, but well, tell me a little bit more about that. Like if you were to scale that, if 10 being that definitely can't do it, 1, and in some cases we were finding that in the end it ended up being a 5 out of 10, and not 10, or 1 itself. So I think scaling is important to do. I've got another chart that I'll be showing on another webinar, but that pre-scaling of maybe thinking about freehand, and I think it's important to think about of how we feel on a scale before we do something, and having a look at it again when we're done, because those numbers are going to be filling, because the negative thoughts are sitting there and probably gauging some of our scale at the beginning before even interjecting to, okay, so I'm going to start doing push-ups. How do I think I feel about these push-ups on a scale from 1 to 10? How much enjoyment do I think I'm going to get? Likelihood I'm going to do it. All those factors to really truly embed in it. And you're typically going to find of how you rate yourself before an activity and the post, there's going to be some slight differences. Mostly, okay, I will say mostly for the better, but some you may learn about yourself that it may be a little bit lower in some areas of degree as you're getting going. But I think scaling is very important to do.
And that allows you to change your approach, right? If it doesn't work,
Yeah.
make minor adjustment, change your approach, and change your approach until you succeed. That's all you do. And then so, a lot of times people come to our clinic, right, Sam, and they say, we've done I've tried everything and I can't lose weight. Well, that's virtually impossible. You haven't tried everything, right? So from a probability perspective, but basically, we just need to continue to changing their approach until they succeed. And obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, but we do have a lot of principles that can help individuals.
And that's coming around the checkup from the NICUP itself of what we're talking about here. So, resilience can be helped to overcome those obstacles and those setbacks as we go. And Dr. Leo also already talked about, Michael Jordan itself in those resiliency moments. And we've kind of talked about ourselves within here. Please feel free in our chat there. If you do have a story, we would love to hear about your resilience story because we are here for you. Definitely, we talk about ourselves and we have different perspectives and different elements. Michael Jordan has his. He's very obedient in that manner, and it's the prompting of his environment. What he's done is to get him there, but I think what I'm going to let Dr. Lee is I know that you had a piece of to share an example of more elements of resiliency, and I'm actually going to be jumping in and around the adaptability and flexibility story. Actually, we talked about Michael Jordan already, but adaptability and flexibility itself.
Yeah, I mean the best example of resilience is you can look at nature for resilience. So nature is so resilient to everything. But one of the best examples of resilience is a willow tree. In a hurricane, everything gets destroyed, to be honest. The biggest tree with the biggest diameter of the trunk, you would think that would be so strong, and the buildings we build are so large and so tough, but against the mightiest hurricane, it just gets toppled over, right? But if you look at the trees that stand, they're predominantly willow tree. And the reason the willow trees stand is that this is the way that it is created. It flows with the wind. It gets to blow, it gets to bend as well, right? There's nothing stiff about it, right? And so that's a prime example of resilience in nature. And the other thing, I learned, I watched this documentary on Bruce Lee. My wife is a huge Bruce Lee fan, by the way. So, and then no, my last name is Lee, and I have no relations to Bruce Lee, right? And she didn't marry because my last name was Lee. But he said something on one of his interviews, and he said it'd be like water. Water takes into the shape of its container. Water can seep through the tiniest crack, can break the strongest thing, right? And it can take any form, right? And so be like water. So it's actually a really cool analogy, right? So if you think yourself, think about these nature phenomena, and that'll help you kind of understand resilience more.
When it comes down to adaptability and flexibility, the things that I've got on here to kind of chat about is that I feel that adaptability refers to the ability to adjust to new conditions, while flexibility is relating to our willingness to change or compromise within there. So those both have to kind of play in part to get that resiliency as we come through. But both those traits are essential for navigating the change, whether it's in our personal lives, our workplace, or our weight management as it goes. But it's difficult, as you think about our evolving world right now and the changes and the fast-paced elements that we're always trying to catch up in, those quick fixes and those easy outs. The Women's Day magazine, 10 days only, lose all this and do all that. We're just faced with just so much evolving information as it comes back in. But if we don't have that adaptability, that flexibility, or the open mindset to try and challenge and see and be resilient and bounce, we won't necessarily get anywhere. And this is one thing I had put out there, and I think Dr. Lee may have touched base on a certain base on other webinars as we go, but you know, when we think about individuals that are able to achieve their weight loss goals as a whole, when you kind of put all the factors in percentage, some of the figures out there, you know, they state that only 20% of people who set out to it can actually get to their goal. And a lot of that comes down to the answer lies in those individuals' resiliency itself. We all have those same instructions of how to eat or what to do, but it does fall back to one's resiliency for bouncing back and keeping that down and always working on forward to it. So it is, you know, it's a shocking percentage, but it doesn't mean that that number can grow. We can, well, we're here to help change that flow, you know, help grow that mindset and move on through. So it's important to establish the comfort with oneself of who they are and how we can just keep on learning for that as we go. So resilience, overcoming these obstacles can be you, if you're willing to. And I hear a lot of folks are willing to lose their weight and get to their goal, but are we willing to deal with the uncomfortable times as well? Are we going to run away from them? Or are we going to move on forward? Are we going to accept our emotions and work with them? Are we going to practice that self-compassion? Are we going to view those setbacks as, you know, wonderful learning experiences? Are you willing to ask for help when you need it? And hold back, you know, can you set those small goals and keep them going? So it's just a interesting outlook. Everyone can have the tools. Anyone can lose weight, you know, itself, as you know, we've got those instructions, but it's that mindset. It's that biggest piece. And that's why we in STEM, a lot of our programming on pushing those thresholds for you. So we are just about wrapping up here as well. So I've got a little conclusion. I'm actually going to read it, guys. So I'm going to read it out here. So the road to weight loss and self-improvement is fought with challenges, as we all know. Okay. But with resilience, we become the unstoppable force of change. So I want to have a little moment of, you know, hands up, who is ready for that change, for that journey as it goes, or is it something that you're going to shy back from? Your success will be in stemming in from of these tools that we've talked about today. So as we leave you in the room, remember that resilience is in with each of us. It's not just innate. We do learn it from learned behaviors. It can change if you want it to change as you go. Harness this inner strength and stay focused on your weight loss goals. Now, I'm going to see if there's any closing remarks that anybody wants to state in here, because we're right at the last 2 minutes. Oh, you guys are good. This was the talk to Dr. Lee and Claudia. Excellent. So what I will be doing is attaching in our post-attendee the negative thought and the alternate thought process. I think it's very important to start looking at those. If you're in our patient load that is visiting with us today, fill it out and bring it in your next appointment. No doubt that we're already going to have it, you know, prepped and ready for you to go, but think about those motions as we go. It's all within you, and happy January. And it's one of the most resilient months as we go. We set those goals. 2 weeks into January is typically the time that everybody realize they need a little bit of resiliency. And I would just say step back into those instructions we've given you. So I look forward to seeing you all on our next webinar. It's February 28th, and it's love and wellness. So going with the theme of February, Valentine's Day, you know, or self-love, but we're going to be building healthy relationships with self and food. So we're going to talk about heart healthy habits itself. We're going to talk about loving your plate with nutrition-rich food. So this one can talk about mental clarity. We'll talk about a little bit of mindset pieces in there once again, but the theme is within self-love and how we can gauge it and what does that actually mean? Are we actually self-loving ourselves when we say certain elements versus thinking about that and giving the right response? So I wish to see you all again in February 28th. Thank you all for joining and commenting on the sidelines there, and we'll see you all very soon.
Have a good night. Thanks.
Bye.